Thank you all for joining us. Again, please be advised we're recording this event. I'm Rosemary Calderallo, again, the Director of Advancement for IONS. Hi, Diane from California, Astrid from Washington. It's so great to be with all of you here today. Please continue to be putting your name in the chat. We love seeing that. We're all in different Zoom squares, but we are, remember, in one room of energy and intention together. It's a reflection in this kind of electronic connection of how we are truly all interconnected. Thank you to our IONS members whose support allows IONS to further its mission to reveal the interconnected nature of reality through scientific exploration and personal discovery, as well as to offer this and other programs to the public. And I see people continuing to pop into the room. But let's get started. I'd like to acknowledge Liam O'Malley, our program coordinator today, helping us out with logistics and making sure we don't miss anything. Welcome to a very special IONS event. For those who have been involved with us, you are all visionaries of the future. And today we're going to talk about planning for the future during this month, which is National Make a Will Month. I've had the privilege in my work through many years to talk with people who are looking for ways to continue helping charities they care about, and a planned gift can offer that way. But most important, for all the ways you support or engage with IONS, we are hopeful that this information today can help you think about how to ensure that those you love are taken care of after your time. Because although we know through science that consciousness continues, the physical world has rules. We'll put a link in the chat so you can find free resources about planned giving after today's event here. And now I'm delighted to welcome our very special guest today, Aquanetta Betts. Aquanetta is the Director of Planned Giving at George Mason University. So we are just so excited that she was able to take time out of her busy day to be with us. Prior to being at the university, she was the Senior Executive Director of Planned Giving at World Vision for the Eastern United States. Before World Vision, Aquanetta was an estate planning attorney in DC and Maryland. She is the immediate past president of the Chesapeake Planned Giving Council and serves on the board of the Baltimore, Maryland Estate Planning Council. She serves in leadership positions with the National Bar Association's RPTE section, the International Association of Advisors in Philanthropy, and the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners as a board member and DEI committee chair. We are very lucky she has joined us here today. She has tremendous expertise, and I know everyone will walk away from this presentation today feeling that sense of empowerment that comes from understanding the way forward for estate planning and taking care of those you love. Welcome, Aquanetta.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you for the great introduction. I will go ahead and share my screen so I can show my slides. But thank you for obviously giving me the invitation to be here. It's wonderful. This month is a very special month, one that we can all really celebrate. It talks about, as you mentioned, Rosemary, the empowerment of what we all can do regarding our legacies and making plans for being generous and also making plans for those that we love as well. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get us started. So August has been designated as National Make a Will Month. And most people, I will cite in the United States, most do not have a will. And then even further, the estate plan, which will include a few more options. Most there are also, they don't have an estate plan. So you're going to get some really helpful information. I will keep this as lively and as engaging as possible. The topic can be very interesting, so just make sure that you listen up, and we're going to go through some of the basics of estate planning, and we're going to talk about wills, of course. It's Make a Will Month. And then we'll go through some charitable giving options and gift opportunities. And then we'll also put in a little bit of fun in there. So in between, you'll see some trivia questions. So that'll liven it up for you. And I hope you'll have some good answers for us. And then we'll follow it up with some Q&A afterwards. And here's a disclaimer, just wanted to point out that this information that will be presented here today is not a comprehensive analysis of the topic presented. The viewer should consult tax and legal advisors to understand all the ramifications of the topics discussed. Please be advised that any information provided in this presentation should not be construed by any person as legal, tax, or accounting advice. So make sure, because your situation, your family situation, family dynamics, they're personal and they're unique to your family. So make sure that you take care of this information regarding your estate planning with your particular advisors. All right, here we go. So how many of you were probably thinking, oh my gosh, estate planning and wills, that's just something that I haven't really thought a lot about. And what really is estate planning? Well, because this is National Make a Will Month, a will is certainly a part of one's estate plan. So I went to the National Association of Estate Planners Councils to get their definition of what is an estate plan, because I'm sure you have ideas. So estate plan encompasses many different things. It includes, of course, the safekeeping of your important documents, the documentation of your assets, the operation of law in various states. And I know just from looking at the chat, you all are from all over the place, even all over the globe. So thank you for joining. And know that estate planning is very specific to your state, to your country, your location. There are going to be some rules and some laws that are going to be particular to where you reside. So make sure you are aware of that. Preparation of legal documents is important. Insurance, availability of trust agreements, charitable giving, and the care of your the benefactor and other important factors. So this is a definition, and there's another part to it. We'll go over that too. What is estate planning? It encourages the timely decision making about what? The method of holding title to certain assets. How are homes titled? The ownership. Who's on the title? That's very important when it comes to estate planning. The designation of beneficiaries, life insurance policies, financial accounts, your individual retirement accounts, your savings accounts. Who's the beneficiary? That's very important, and it's part of your estate plan. Did you ever really think it was part of your estate plan? Well, it is. Some of the possible transfers of assets during your lifetime. So you get it. There's a whole lot of words here on the screen. There are a whole lot here. But what you can take away from this, estate planning covers a lot. And we all have an estate plan. It's not a gauge of wealth. How wealthy a person is does not mean that they would definitely have an estate plan in place. We all have an estate. An estate includes those things that you own that are in your name, that you have some ownership in. Things like your house, your real estate, property, automobiles, jewelry, your household possessions, your collections. I know many people, they collect trains, they collect cameras, they collect art, they collect all kinds of musical instruments. So those collections, yes, that's part of your estate. Of course, household possessions. And then those things that we oftentimes don't really consider as part of our estate, they are. So bank accounts, your annuities, retirement assets, those stocks, those bonds, even if you own a business, I'm sure there are many of you out there who own your own business. And that's great, that's wonderful. However, that business is considered a part of your estate. Life insurance, of course, and then retirement plans. We're now in the midst of the great wealth transfer. And the baby boomers in America, baby boomers, that age group, they're now part of that great wealth transfer. They acquired property, homes, real estate, the retirement accounts, and there's now underway this great wealth transfer. And Some information shows the great wealth transfer is about $84 trillion. So that includes retirement plans for folks and real estate. So you have an estate, and here's one item on this list that you probably never really thought about. If you have, kudos to you, but your digital assets, what's going to happen to those digital assets? Even your social media accounts, and practically all of us have some life, so to speak, on social media. There are some options for handling your social media accounts, but it is part of your estate. Even your streaming, your downloading, your music, those things that you may own, you have accumulated, part of your digital assets, and it should be addressed in your estate plan. So I'm sure probably you're thinking, oh, I never really considered that as being part of my estate. Well, I'm here to tell you it is. So make sure you include that in your planning as well. So there's a lot to an estate. So here's some trivia for you. And you all can place your information in the chat. What do these three folks have in common? Picasso, Jimi Hendrix, Abraham Lincoln, or four. I have four folks here. Sonny Bono. And you may or may not know all of these folks, but hopefully you know most of them. What do they have in common? You're probably thinking not much. Well, they do have something in common. In fact, they have one big thing in common. They all died intestate. And intestate means they didn't have a will. Yes. So there you go. They all have that in common. I'm sure you were probably wondering what in the world could these folks have that was similar? And there you go. So they didn't have an estate plan, and it complicated things for their families. And as you can imagine, the artwork, the music, probably some of the assets that have been accumulated. Uh, you're looking at these folks and saying, no way they had anything in common. Well, they did. And their families had to deal with and navigate not having a plan in place. And it certainly complicates things for those that we love. All right, estate planning basics. I'm going to talk a little bit about these items. If you're wondering what those basics are, just going to be a quick overview just to give you a general idea when we talk about estate planning, what that includes. And you likely have many of these items already. Of course, we'll talk about a will. A will is one of those things that we certainly consider like a basic asset that or basic estate planning document. Now, there are many ways that people can put a will in place. Certainly, going through an estate planning attorney has the background, the information, and the skill set they've worked on probably for years to put your will in place. But there are many other ways that wills can be put into place. There are some online databases, there are some online services, but certainly having an advisor to look over your documents is certainly very important. So, basic estate planning items include bequests, and bequests usually are included in your will. And that's usually when you make a gift to your favorite nonprofit, a profit, nonprofit, or charity of choice. Also, what you can include in your will, if a person has minor children, or children perhaps with special needs, you can include a name for the person who will care for your minor children. So that's very important. You can also name the personal representative of your estate, the executor of your estate. Depending on where you live, it may be called something different. But the will has like the basic information and it helps with the distribution of your assets, of your property. So, very important. Another item for a basic estate planning item would be your financial power of attorney. And this item is probably one of the most important that you can have because it actually can come into place today, currently, while we are very much alive here. This financial power of attorney will allow you to appoint an agent to help out. In the case you're unable to, you may be temporarily incapacitated. And so that financial power of attorney will be able to assist and help with financial and business matters. So it's an important document, a basic estate planning document. The other one deals with medical care and medical issues. That's another great basic estate planning item to have. You can appoint your healthcare agent also to handle your medical matters. And you can also indicate your treatment preferences with your advanced medical directive. So different states, different locations will call these things something different, but these are the basics in general terms. These are some of the items that when we talk about estate planning, this is what we're really looking at. And then some people may need more items depending on your particular situation. If you have perhaps young children or even young adult children that you think, oh, they spend too much money. There's no way I want to get them a bunch of money or they inherit a bunch of assets, they're not ready to handle that. So you can actually set up a trust document to distribute the money according to how you want that money to go to them. It could be maybe when they turn 25, maybe when they turn 35, they'll get some of those assets. So some people may need more documents. This is just the basics that we're covering here today. All right. So the 7 tools of estate planning. We talked a little bit about accounts like financial accounts, but here's one tool to keep in mind. Check your beneficiary designations like your life insurance policies, your financial accounts, bank accounts, your retirement accounts. There are people who've had retirement accounts perhaps when they started a position or a job years ago, and they put one person on that particular beneficiary form. And guess what? Something happened. That person is no longer able to serve or to receive those benefits from that life insurance policy. And that can really complicate matters. So here's one thing you should note. Make sure that you check your beneficiary designations when something happens, a life event happens. If there's a marriage, a birth, there's a death, there's a retirement, something changes in your life, you should check your beneficiary designations periodically, but certainly when there's something that happens, you want to go back and make sure they're up to date. Otherwise, it can certainly complicate matters if those beneficiary designations are out of date and the person named is someone who's no longer able to actually receive those benefits. So, very important. The other item, of course, we talked about those basic estate planning documents that a person needs. And the other one is to set up a will. And as I mentioned before, you may need a trust in your family, depending on the dynamics. If you have property in a couple of different states, it may be advisable that you have a trust, depending on what your advisor will recommend. Also, we mentioned if you would like to make a bequest, if you'd like to make a gift to a particular nonprofit or organization of choice. Certainly, these sorts of gifts are gifts that are usually much larger than a person will be able to make during their lifetime. And these gifts often help to sustain organizations. So you can be very generous through your estate plan. The other tools we're going to talk about are number 5. Remember that life changes. And I talked about that briefly. If there's a life event that happens, you need to make sure that your documents reflect that. Once you make your estate plan, you put your documents in place. Don't just sit it and forget it or put it at the top on a shelf somewhere in a closet. These things change and they change often because life happens to all of us. So make sure they're up to date. I'll give you an example of what I recall. A woman who was a widow and she had 3 adult children, and she wanted to talk to me about her estate plan. We had a conversation and we found out, fortunately, before it was too late, that her life insurance policy that she'd had for decades through her previous employer, it had her husband listed as the beneficiary, and he was no longer around. So we were able to, through our conversation, find that out, and she made the change and updated it. So now it reflected her 3 adult children would be the beneficiaries of her life insurance policy. So it's very important. And the other thing, make sure that we're communicating with our family and our loved ones. It's one thing to put these wonderful plans in place, create your will, but no one knows about it. So we have to make sure we're communicating. And in no way should we just give all this information out to folks who are not closely connected to us, but certainly those trusted individuals. It makes a lot of sense for us to let them know that we have these plans in place. There's another story, unfortunately, it's not one of the best stories, but there was a family where a gentleman, he lived alone and he was failing in his health, and he had set up a $1 million life insurance policy through one of his bank accounts. And unfortunately, he didn't tell his children that he had set that particular life insurance policy up. And so when he needed additional care, his children stepped in and started caring for him. But they also did things like they stopped the mail from coming to his home. And they didn't get one of the letters of notice from the life insurance company that the policy was not paid the way it should have been. And what happened? You can probably guess. Unfortunately, that particular life insurance policy for about $1 million, it was no longer good because the payments were not being made. The children didn't know. So communicating with our family, our trusted family members or loved ones is very, very important. And your healthcare treatment preferences, you want to put those in writing. So certainly a lot has changed. We've been through some really interesting times over the last 3 or 4 years. And so healthcare, how do you want to be treated? Make sure you document that as well. And of course, the bonus key is, I mentioned it previously and I'll mention it again throughout. Consult with an estate planning attorney, your advisor. Your situation, your dynamics are entirely different than the next person. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to take a second and look here at the answer someone's asking for an answer to. Let me get the question here. Why do I need a will if everything I have is named in my trust? Sometimes things will come up and things will happen that will fall outside of your trust. And so sometimes it is recommended, depending on your circumstances, and it may not be appropriate, but sometimes both are recommended. Usually there's a setup where a will can be just the basic part of your estate plan, and then the trust will certainly handle most of your distributions and your assets. But oftentimes a will can be there just in case something comes up that's not officially or appropriately addressed in the trust document. So the will can be that somewhat of a catch-all. And so depending on your scenario, a trust may be appropriate if that's the advice you were given. But oftentimes, depending on a person's scenario, a will that accompanies a trust can certainly be the best way to address their scenario. So good question. All right. So I'll move on since we've covered the 7 keys to estate planning. So here's another bit of trivia for you. So you can certainly chime in the chat with this one. Get engaged, chime in the chat, give me your answers. I'll take a look at the chat and see what we have there. So what is 7 feet tall? It's green and has a trust fund. Is it a toy dinosaur? How about a houseplant? What about a painting? Or is it D, none of the above? So what do you think, you all? Which one is it? All right, I see some coming into the chat here. It's 7 feet tall, green, and it's a trust fund baby. So what do you think? All right, we have some different answers coming in here. We have some C, generating a lot. A painting is generating a lot. We have a mixture. We have B, I think I saw an A in here. Wow. Okay. All right. And D, we have none of the above. All right. So those are all good guesses. I appreciate that feedback from you all. Now let's see what we have. What's the answer? And let's see what we have. There's the answer. So it's a house plant. The house plant at the time, this was years ago, a few years ago. So we don't know if they upped the amount of this trust fund. It was $5,000 in the trust fund for a plant. So good guesses. Who knew, right? Who knew that you could actually put a house plant in a trust? Who knew that? So I wanted to share that because we've all heard about different types of trust, and there are all sorts of trust. Trust can really run just a wide array of what you can actually hold in a trust or what can be funded with a trust. You're probably more familiar with people saying someone's a trust fund baby or they inherited a trust, or you've probably heard, even nowadays, one that is really, really growing and it continues to grow. Their pet trust. So if you have pets, you have a wonderful family pet, you want to make sure that that pet has funding that someone can care for your pet, perhaps the way that you cared for your pet, at least financially. Certainly, pet trusts are a thing, and they're very, very popular. A lot of people put funds into a trust for their pets, their family, by the way. So that's just one way that trust can be set up and can be used. Of course, we know them as I mentioned before for children and young people. And I see one person here in the chat said, "Wow, yeah." So there's a plant trust. So there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of good information out there about what can be put into trust. And real estate, of course, you can put into a trust. You can put really just a whole host of things into a trust. And what's the purpose of a trust? You're probably wondering. The purpose of a trust is to hold assets. So if you look at a trust as a bucket, just consider like a water bucket of sorts. You put funding into that water bucket. And so then you would write up instructions. And then you say, upon this incident happening when my son turns 25, I want you to take out of that bucket some funds and give to my son. You can have an incentive trust if your child is going to college or some sort of schooling, if there is some sort of a marriage or a business, or even funding a down payment for a first home or property. So there are all sorts of things that you can put into a trust. Very flexible. And your particular circumstances, again, very, very customizable as to what you want. So here we are. We've talked a whole lot about what those basics are of estate planning. And how many of you actually thought about your digital assets being part of your estate? And when you think about those digital assets, think about what will happen to them. So we need to put a plan in place. And a lot of these companies, they're not very eager to just switch things over or address those accounts if that person's no longer around. And so we have to make sure we give those instructions through our estate plans. So there's language, your advisors can certainly guide you through how to address your digital assets as a part of your estate plan. So there are many other things, like I mentioned previously in the other slides, that make up a person's estate plan. So here we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to talk about charitable giving and gift opportunities. And this is the place where we have the opportunity through our legacy giving, through our charitable giving, through our will. We can do this in our wills, in our trust, beneficiary designations. We can give back. We can be generous. Organizations that you care about, you love their missions, you love their work. This is an opportunity for you to say, I have included your organization in my estate plan. Through my will, I've named your organization to receive 10% or 50% of what remains in my estate. You can certainly take care of your family in your will. You can address your family and what you want them to have, but you can also include giving something back to those organizations that you are passionate about. So keep that in mind. You can do that through your will, through a trust. Also, we mentioned the beneficiary designations, and they're really some of the most straightforward ways to make updates and include your charities or your nonprofits of choice by naming them as a beneficiary of your life insurance policy, of your retirement accounts, even your financial accounts, so bank accounts, savings accounts. Beneficiary forms can be used to name your favorite organizations, a percentage. So if you're thinking, I have children, I have grandchildren, I have a spouse, I have other family, friends that I want to care for, absolutely. And we should do that. But there's a way you can do a percentage. You don't have to give all to your favorite nonprofit. You can do a percentage gift. So you can include a 10% gift to your favorite charity or nonprofit. So there's a way you can certainly make sure your family is cared for, and you can also give to your favorite causes as well. So keep that in mind. It's not all to one. You can make sure that you include your favorite causes and missions in your estate plan as well. So the other thing I want to point out, there are some gifts that can be a part of your estate plan and they can come in today as current gifts. So the individual retirement account, and many folks, especially of a certain age group, they've been able to save and put away money in their individual retirement accounts. Now, the wonderful thing about individual retirement accounts is that they can make current gifts today. Once a person reaches a certain age 70 and a half, they can start making gifts and those gifts will not be taxed. Once they reach age 73, they are then required to receive a minimum distribution from their IRA account. And if they're giving to a charity or a nonprofit anyway, those gifts can go straight to the nonprofit and it's a non-taxable event for the person who owns the IRA account or the person who is 70 and a half. They can currently give from their IRA and it's not a taxable event for them, an amount up to $105,000. A person who's 73, they can give based on what their required minimum distribution amount is. That's based on their age, what's in their account, and some other items. But just know that can make a current gift from your IRA account and also future gifts. You can name your nonprofit of choice as the beneficiary. So, a lot of information, a lot of ways that you can be generous and give back. Of course, we talked about life insurance before. The beneficiary designations can be updated. Financial accounts we talked about. And the other thing that you've heard over and over and over is to make sure that you run this information by your advisors. We don't want to have any changes made to any of these documents without making sure that it aligns with what your goals are and what your intentions are. So it's very important. Charitable gift annuities are another way that we can look at being charitable. Many organizations will offer their supporters a way to set up a charitable gift annuity. So if you're wondering what's a charitable gift annuity, a charitable gift annuity, and there are a couple of different types, but to speak in general about them, you've probably heard of commercial annuities through a financial firm or company. Somewhat similar. However, the charitable gift annuity, you fund it with different types of assets. It can be non-cash assets such as real estate, stock, and cryptocurrency at one time. That's still here with us, but you certainly, some nonprofits will accept cryptocurrency as a way to fund charitable gift annuities. And also even business interests can be used to fund a charitable gift annuity. The charitable gift annuity, once it's funded with whatever assets you would like to fund it with, it then generates income, and the income can be distributed to you or someone else that you name, a spouse in particular. And then once that charitable gift annuity Once it ends, the term ends upon a person's lifetime, usually, that gift annuity, what remains, will then go to your charity of choice. So it's really a win-win. You can get income off of that. Really good for folks who are looking at retirement. Some folks who are even looking at perhaps they didn't have a traditional 9 to 5 type of job where they were able to save for retirement through their job or their employer. Some folks who are selling businesses decide to, hey, I want to make sure I have some sort of income when I retire later on. So I'm going to set up a charitable gift annuity today. They may not be looking at retirement for a while. So just know there are different ways that charitable gift annuity can be set up. Charitable trust. There are a few different types of charitable trust. Just know that they're out there. We will not go into all the details. If you're curious about it, I'm sure you can gather information here. You have folks here in this great team. They would be willing to get you all the information that you would like. Great stuff out there for gift opportunities and great ways to be generous. The other one that I want to point out, the Donor Advised Fund. And many of you here are probably currently giving through your donor advised fund. They're growing. They're really growing like crazy. As a matter of fact, the Giving USA report from 2024 showed that giving has increased through donor advised funds more so than giving from individuals. And so that's something to know if you have a donor advised fund or if you're curious as to what they are. You certainly have folks here that are very, very knowledgeable about that. Rosemary, in particular, I've worked with her on a couple of different presentations, and she's really knowledgeable about donor advised funds. And so if you have questions, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to assist you. But just know that that's another option for giving. And also, current gifts can come through the Donor Advised Fund through grants. And then there's also an option where you can name your nonprofit or your charity of choice as the beneficiary of your donor advised fund. So there are many ways that you can do your charitable giving and incorporate it in your will. As we talked about it earlier, this is National Make a Will Month. And a great opportunity if you do not have your will in place or your estate plan in place. This is an opportunity for you to take a step back, put it on your to do list, find out who would be in your area, an estate planning attorney or one of your advisors to help you with the next steps to get this done. And make sure you put this on your list that you actually put some action to and move things forward. So it's a great opportunity for us to take a look at what's happening in our lives, our families. Perhaps your estate plan is one that you've had for a few years and you need to update it. Perhaps your children were very young when you had your first will put together, and now they're older, more independent. Perhaps your life insurance policy you had when your children were very young and maybe not needed as much today as it was before. So look at all those assets and those things that you could perhaps make a part of your charitable giving. So there are a lot of ways to include your favorite missions and nonprofits. So I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about Make a Will in this month of August. And so there you are. I know that was a lot of material, you all, but there's a lot of information. There's so much that we can talk about and really dig into what I shared from the slides. This is just a brief overview. And nothing here really gets into much detail because wills and trust and estate planning is such a wide array of different ways that we can talk about it. So I just want to make sure that you all have questions. If you have them, want to make sure I get a chance to answer them. I will take a look at the chat, the Q&A, and see if there are any questions in there. And I do not see any, but feel free if you have any questions. If I need to go over something, if you heard me mention something and you want clarification, I am certainly here to answer your questions.
Well, thank you, Aquanetta, for that wonderful overview. And I do have a question that I get pretty frequently. Can you describe for us the role of probate? and what the differences are depending on the instruments that are used. If everybody has to go through probate after they pass, how does it affect families? Things like
Yes.
that.
Yes, absolutely. Probate, we talked a little bit about, I mentioned in the trivia question about intestate, which is when someone dies and they do not have a will.
Mhm,
So that's considered a probate estate. That's when someone has assets, they have not put a clear title, there's no title perhaps to an automobile or the home that they reside in. The title's not in their name, or it is in their name, but they don't have a will. So if they don't have a will or it's not going through a trust, those items will end up in what I call, and just draw a big circle, draw the probate circle. If there's no will and the item is in an individual's name, in your name, and the deed does not list someone to inherit that property or that property will transfer to, and your name is on that property, it's going to go in that circle for probate. If, as I mentioned, that life insurance policy has someone who is an invalid, or the person who's named as the beneficiary is no longer able to receive those benefits, perhaps they're deceased themselves, those proceeds oftentimes go into that probate circle. So that's why it's so important that we have our deeds up to date to transfer the property to who we want it to go to. Also, our beneficiary designations. And why is probate so relevant? It's relevant because one, you perhaps wanted someone to have that property to go directly to them. If it goes to probate, depending on what state you live in, it could be pricey. There could be additional fees and cost to probate. You have to name, or someone will be appointed, a personal representative or an executor of your estate to settle the distribution of those assets that have gone into that bubble, that circle, because you didn't have someone to transfer that to, it wasn't named. So probate is very important from the standpoint of, there are many people who have assets, but they will never have any of them go into that circle.
mhm,
Why? Because they have their titles up to date on their property, their real estate. It's going to transfer to someone, it's named and listed. Two, their life insurance policies, their retirement accounts, their financial accounts all have a beneficiary designation listed. So they will go to someone. They're not going to go in that bubble, in that circle. So many people can avoid having their assets go to probate by making sure titles and ownership, transfer, deeds, all of that stay up to date. That's why it's so important. And the one person asked a question about, why do I need a will if I have a trust? If you do not have a will and there's a particular asset that comes in, you may not be able to foresee that type of asset coming in, but it comes through. Sometimes things happen. There's sometimes some sort of case or some sort of asset that you hadn't planned for it or envisioned, and you don't have it in your trust and you don't have a will, it's going to go into that circle. And there are a lot of things that can happen when it goes into that probate circle. Could be some expense there. There's also the time that it takes for someone to settle your estate. And as many of us know here, especially you, Rosemary, you've seen estates that can take years
mhm.
before they're settled, before the property is distributed to all the persons who are to receive the property. So you need to make sure your deeds are up to date. It transfers properly to the person you want it to go to, or organization you'd like it to go to. Many organizations will actually accept real estate. Certainly, you want to have that conversation with the organizations and their development team. But it is very, very important that we have our documents up to date, beneficiary designation. So that's the probate side of it, that bubble, that circle. And oftentimes we try to avoid as much probate as possible.
Mhm.
So, Rosemary, I know that was a lot, but did I
Yeah,
get to?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I saw a couple of questions in the chat and one in the Q&A. Someone was asking, can you recommend some of the websites where there's lists of lessons learned, from where do you look in your own state for things like that?
Ooh, lessons learned. That's really good, collecting the information. I'm looking at the okay, yes. I'm going to say, there are obviously in each state, each location, there are different bar associations, on a state level. And then we have on the national level, we have the National Association of Estate Planners Councils. I don't know that they necessarily have like a lessons learned type list, but they certainly will have information. I know they have a page there for National Estate Planning Awareness Week, which is in October, every third week in October in the US. And they have information there, like telling people why it's important to have an estate plan. So I don't know that they necessarily have like lessons learned, but that's a really good idea. So
Mhm.
that's a really good a blog in your state. I would say there are probably attorneys that would have on their websites some of the lessons learned. You can probably just set out to do a Google search on estate planning gone wrong, and
Mm.
you'll probably find a lot of lessons learned. There was a webinar yesterday actually about it was called Estates Gone Wild. And it was similar to what you just mentioned. So there are a lot of cases out there, a lot of and every year, there's just a bounty of new cases where something has gone wrong. So I would say just Google it. You'll probably find someone in your particular state with a website, an attorney that would have on there, here's something you want to be aware of. But that's a really good question. There's a lot out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then thanks, Aquanetta. And then someone requested if you could post the slide again about the 7 keys. Take another
Oh,
look at it.
oh yes, yes. Let me get that information. Let me share my screen here. Yes. And we will also get these slides out to you all. Let's get back to.
And then while you're doing that, there's another question. Someone asked if IONS has individuals who can be advisors to help set up wills, trusts, and estate distributions. We do not offer that personal service. We do have philanthropic advisors, and we can work with your advisors to make sure that the charitable side of it matches with what your advisors are recommending, so that everything blends together. And as Aquanetta said, if you're looking for an attorney, go to your local bar association. If you're looking for a financial advisor, the Financial Planning Association, which has branches in most big cities that cover regions. They're statewide and national, and they are phenomenal resources also at FPA. And then someone asked, I have a will, but I have another asset to add. Do I need to completely redo the will or just make an amendment? How does that work?
Yeah. So of course, depending on the asset, if you it needs to be added to your will, if it's something that certainly has to happen. Years ago, amendments were done more frequently. Codicils are what they were called and still are called. We don't see them as much now as we used to. And one reason is because the preparing or the preparation of the documents is not as cumbersome as it used to be to make updates. So I would certainly, if you need to add something, an asset to your will, I certainly recommend you reaching out to an estate planning attorney to get that done. They may go along with some sort of amendment or codicil, so to speak. But nowadays, you will probably find that most often it will be just a complete reworking of that document to add that new asset. There are a couple of different reasons for that. One, when there's something outside of the main document, as you can imagine, it just lends itself to being a tricky item to navigate, meaning people can question it oftentimes, or making sure that it is actually there with your other documents. So check with your advisor and see if a codicil of some sort makes more sense, or if a new document would be the best way to go in your case.
Thanks, Aquanetta. Can you just flip to the next slides? Okay, there it is. And then Someone was asking to see the title slide, which maybe we can do in just a minute. Someone asked, is 38 years too young to create a will? I'm sure you have an opinion about that. Is 38 years old too young to create a will?
Oh, you know, my opinion, my theory on this is if you do not create your will yourself or your estate plan yourself, if you don't take it upon yourself to do it, you certainly have one. It's the one that the state that you reside in has put into place for you. And it's probably not what you expect. So I usually like to think of it as something that we all should do. Age, as long as you meet the requirements in your particular state, location, or age. Um, Mental competency is certainly one of those other things that, is required when you're signing documents. And so breathing. So if you meet those requirements that your state has to complete your will, certainly I would never put an age of being too young. Even when young people go away to college, which, now we've had a lot of people going away to schools here, starting their fall semester, and things can happen. And if a parent is expecting to be able to address their now adult 18-year-old young person's issues, whether they're medical issues, there are some privacy laws around that will not allow a parent, even if that person is, 18 and they're at college and the parents can pay for their tuition. But if they don't have the documents in place, the 18-year-old or the young student. And so I would not let age or too young be my guide. Check and see what's in your state. And I would go that route. If your state allows you, once your state allows you to create your will, I would say put that into place, your will, your estate plan. Yeah.
Thank you, Aquanetta. And someone asked what online tool you might recommend if they don't feel that they can go to an attorney.
Yes. So I will not necessarily recommend a particular online tool, but there are many out there. There are some that are more geared towards if you're looking at doing adding some charitable gift into your will, your documents. And Rosemary may have some names that she will be able to provide at some point. But there are some that are, as I mentioned, geared towards making a charitable gift and creating your will. And then there are some that are more geared towards you creating your will and your estate plan. But there are many out there. But for recommendations, I will not give. But they're certainly out there, and we can certainly, Rosemary, if you have any ideas or a way to provide information. I don't know that you do,
Yeah.
but we'll certainly take a look at that, and between Rosemary and I, will make sure that we get back to you with some additional
Yeah,
information.
I mean, I can just say right now, we've had a few ION supporters who've reached out to freewill.com.
Mhm.
But again, as Aquanetta said, there are instances where it's very important that you consult with your own attorney, make sure things are right for your state or your financial advisor. But that's just one of many tools that can help you figure out what direction to go in and work on the basics. Someone asked, can I handwrite a note to a beneficiary to add, for example, a pet rescue?
Yes, and what was the last piece of that? Um,
An example was a pet rescue. Can I
can you
handwrite a note to the beneficiary to add? An example was pet rescue.
Yes. So depending on your particular state where you are, holographic wills are admissible, but some states, most states do not allow handwritten wills. And even the ones that do allow handwritten wills, there are certain requirements that have to be met. And most of us are probably not going to meet those requirements. So, handwritten wills, that's going to be state specific. Wherever you reside, that's a question that someone in that state will be able to provide you with information on handwritten wills. It is certainly not something that I would say is optimal to even consider because there are a lot of things that could go wrong there. I would certainly recommend that you get advice regarding your will or writing anything in particular handwritten.
And then someone asked, is it important to let the organization that the nonprofit that you want to make a gift to know if they're in your estate plan? What's the advantage of that?
Yeah, so a great question. And Rosemary, I know you're probably shaking your head going, yes, it's important to let the organization know for a couple of different reasons. One, the organization would love to make sure that we are communicating with you. We want to make sure that your wishes are properly documented. We have the information that we need to help make sure that your goals, your intentions are something that we can actually work with. So sometimes we get gifts that will come in, we had no idea that the person was including our organization, and the gift is not as easy for us to make sure that we move forward with their intentions. So we can certainly work together on the front end to best address your needs and make sure that we get that gift out the way you want it to go. So that's the first thing to make sure we have your gift intentions documented and that it's something that we can work together on. And the other thing is to make sure that we are acknowledging and recognizing and thanking you for the gift. So certainly it's best if the organization is aware of the gift that it's actually something that you've included in your plans.
Mhm. Thank you. And of course, someone who chooses to share that information could always choose to be publicly anonymous, also for privacy's sake. And just a last thought as we're coming up on the hour, Aquanetta, what's the role of someone's values in doing their will and estate plan?
Very important. Their values, their beliefs, all of those things are very, very important when you talk about someone's faith base, their spirituality. You talk about um, their family dynamics, what that the beliefs are, what they believe in, all around should go into their values for their estate plan. And
Mhm,
certainly that's why we should customize and make sure that we are putting our spin, our touch on what we want and
mhm.
not leaving it up to chance for what the state perhaps has for us. So values are critical to making sure that you put your information, your plans, and your intentions in writing.
Thank you so much, Aquanetta. We're just so grateful for all the information that you shared and for being with us here today. I'd like to say to everybody, don't forget about the free resources available on the plan giving part of the IONS website. And also on that website part, that page will be ways to be in touch with us if you have follow-up questions. Liam will put that in the chat again. We're so grateful for your participation and your questions because your questions help other people too. Your support to ensure IONS continues its important work is always gratefully received. If you're interested in becoming a member, again, check the chat for a link to find out more about that. And on the link, you can check out engagement options and see what feels best for your particular circumstances. Basic membership begins at $60 a year, and Circle membership begins at $1,000 a year with opportunities for small group discussions and events with ION scientists. And everyone who is a member gets an immense range of free videos and resources to enjoy and explore. So again, thank you so much to Aquanetta Betts from George Mason University. Thank you for everything you shared, and thank you everyone for being with us here today. We look forward to being with you all again very soon. Have a great rest of your day.